Chairman, most partisan governor in Minnesota has seen as quite the charge. So I would like you to get into some specifics if you could, because most of the country, up until last week, Governor Tim Walz was not a household national name. Now he is, but you worked with him in Minnesota politics or worked in Minnesota politics. So what is it like, especially as a Republican, working with him as a Democrat?
Well, as I said, he's been difficult to work with. He is governed in a very hard left way. A couple of examples. In 2022, when he ran for re-election, we had a big surplus, $17.6 billion surplus. He promised to return that money to taxpayers after the election. They got very narrow majorities, 1-seat majority in the Senate, about a 4-seat majority in the Minnesota House. And they completely governed as if this was a hard left state. They spent the entire surplus, did not return any of it to taxpayers. And then they raised another $10 billion of taxes on top of that. Gas taxes, sales taxes, business taxes, a new tax on employers and employees to fund an emergency leave mandate that is going to devastate businesses. The tax has already gone into effect, but the program has not. I've never seen the business community in Minnesota so united in opposition to any governor. Businesses typically are fairly nonpartisan. They work with Republicans and Democrats, but they have found this governor to be especially difficult to work with because he adopts a ideological viewpoint that is frankly very anti-business. So he has been difficult to work with on that score. So I think in addition to just the economic policies he's embraced, I think he's also embraced some very controversial social policies as well. He famously said during the campaign he was not in favor of late-term abortion, for example, but he signed a law in Minnesota that makes Minnesota's abortion policy the most extreme in the country, maybe in the world, taxpayer funded up to the very last minute, even repealed a law that required doctors to try to protect the life of a child who was born after an abortion didn't work, but they repealed that law. So in effect, that means that the abortion can take place even though the baby has been born. Very, very extreme. And yet he claimed he was not for those kind of late-term abortions. So he has been a divisive figure and adopted, as I said, a very hard left position because that is where the base of the Democratic Party is in Minnesota.
He was asked if he would face attacks on his record from the right, and this was his response. What a monster. Obviously, that was sarcastic. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn, and women are making their own healthcare decisions. What do you make of his response defending his record?
Well, again, a classic socialist liberal response. Anything that happens that's good has got to be because some government program did it. And, I guess he's saying that without his programs, people wouldn't be eating, which is just pure unadulterated nonsense. So he's got a very, very hard left philosophy. He sees the world through that vision, through that lens. He has not done nothing to encourage economic growth in this state. And so I think that's been a huge problem. We've seen businesses leave the state. And as I said, the business community in Minnesota has never been as united in opposition to any governor as they are to this one. And it's because the policies he's adopted have been so draconian and so terrible. So, he can make those statements and claim that big government is the engine that does every good thing, but most people know that's nonsense.
I know that you take issue with his economic policies. We're Forbes, so we like talking about economic policies, and the American people do too. That is the number one issue in this election facing American voters now. So how do you think his record, specifically when it comes to the economy, will translate, say, him and Harris win in November?
Well, it would be a disaster for the country. We already know that the Biden economic policies have been terrible and led to record high inflation. We've backed off completely from the idea that we want to be energy independent. You've got to recognize there are national security issues around energy development and energy use. The Biden administration has ignored that. They've spent tons of money. They've adopted policies that have been very inflationary. And Governor Walz has done the same thing. Just for an example, he adopted a increase in the gas tax that's indexed to inflation, so it's going to go up every year no matter what. So these are policies that hurt every American in the pocketbook. They look at the price of things on the shelves in grocery stores. They look at the price of gasoline, In Minnesota, of course, we've got long winters. They look at the price of heating. These things have all gone up under Tim Walz and Biden administration. So if Harris and Walz become the next administration, we will see this country take a very hard left turn. And I think that would be disastrous for the economy as well as for the people of the country.